The story is found over the internet. I found it a charming story. I'm not sure if you will. But anyway, this woman was getting ready to go on vacation. And you know that feeling. This is the best part of vacation, of those few days right before vacation. You get that enthusiasm, that excitement, that energy. Anyway, she's packing, getting ready, throwing things in her suitcase. And her 3-year-old daughter is sitting in the bed sort of watching mommy pack for the vacation. And as she's tossing things in, her daughter sticks out her 2 fingers and says, "Look, Mommy." And Mommy comes over and she grabs her fingers and says, "Mommy's going to eat your fingers." And she puts them in her mouth and pretends she's chewing on them. We all have done that with little kids. You know how we do that, right? They'd be eating their fingers. And so she did and finished. And then she left the room to grab something else. And she comes back in the room and she noticed her daughter now standing on the bed and looking quite forlorn, quite saddened. She said, "Well, what's the matter, honey?" And her daughter sticks out her finger and said, "What happened to my booger?" Oh, God, that's terrible. 7:30 in the morning, and you just woke up an hour earlier. Oh, that's disgusting. I thought it was charming, but anyway. Well, we all have it. Germs and stuff like that, because we have the commandments, and, well, we don't quite keep them the way that God would like us to keep the commandments. And today we heard in our first reading the 10 Commandments, and it's a covenant, by the way, and we've been looking at covenants the last few weekends, right? Let's make a deal. We had Noah, Abraham, and now Moses. In fact, we called it the Mosaic Covenant, or the Sinai. Sinai, the mountain where Moses received the 10 Commandments. Now, I made a mistake when I spoke to when we started this whole series, when I spoke about covenant. I said it was agreement between 2 parties, but unlike a contract, I said, if one side doesn't live up to their part of the deal, the other side does. The other partner, right? Well, that may not be totally true. There's conditional and unconditional. Out of the 7 covenants in Scripture, 6 are unconditional. There's one that's conditional, and that's today's. For God does say, you keep the commandments, I will do this. If you don't, this is what happens. In fact, you read Deuteronomy chapter 28, you can see the whole list. God says, keep the commandments, I will bless you, I'll bless your family, you will have children, you will have prosperity, you will have peace in your country. If you don't, well, it's just the opposite, it's doomsday. But the truth is really, I don't believe God punishes us for breaking the commandments. Okay, if you break the commandments, I don't believe God is going to punish us for breaking the commandments. We simply suffer the consequences. See? The commandments really is to the minimum what God requests. And it helps us. How do I live toward God, with myself, and to those with me in my society? It really teaches us how can we make the best of this being not heaven. Because if you don't follow the commandments, well, you see what happens. You know the news. You know how we live. But you don't keep the commandments. It just makes things havoc for us. We live in fear. We lock our doors. We live behind gated communities. We're afraid to let our children go out unattended. Oh, the list is on and on. I'll just give you just one little, thing that really struck me just this week. Not the worst, but still, when it happens to you, it's a terrible thing. Ruth, Ruth is she's the mother of Rick, who was in charge of the RCIA, bringing people into the Catholic Church just a few nights ago. Not for the first, but the second time, her house was broken into. That's a terrible feeling. Have someone bash into your house and to go through all your things and steal, because not only for what you lost, but the insecurity that in the back of your mind, the fear, will it happen again? Am I safe? And all those things, as you can imagine what it must be like. Not only that, her house wasn't the only house that was broken into. There seemed to be a series there where she lives. Okay? Actually, one home caught the 2 perpetrators. You see them on the video there. 2 young guys. Fortunately, you see one even having a gun, all right? They just bash in the front door. Even though the house had alarm, didn't bother them because they know how much time they have before the help arrives. They steal and rob. Anyway, this is an example of what happens when you don't want to follow the commandments. Because therefore the only commandment is, if I'm not under God or under some sort of authority, the only commandment is this: don't get caught. And that's why God says you want to be, live in a prosperous, the blessed way, you keep the commandments. If you don't, it's terrible. You can't live, right? And that's what I think it is. So I don't think God has to punish us. We suffer the consequences of not following his way of life. Oddly enough, 97% of Americans think the commandments are very important. 97% of Americans think the commandments are very important. Only 5% can name 3 of the commandments, though. Oh, you're laughing, huh? Well, let's see how well you guys do with the commandments, okay? Let's see. Now, I know it's been a while since we learned the commandments. Probably went back since we were little kids. And we all learn them in certain phrase, certain term, that wording is so maybe a little different. Words change, but let's see. And if you didn't remember, don't feel bad, because the Albert Einstein, he had a terrible memory, by the way. He couldn't even remember his own phone number. Imagine that. So we won't make you feel any better. Let's just see if you know the commandments. I'll tell you what, I'll give you the first half. How's that? Make it easy for you. I'll give you the first half. You just call out the second half. Are we ready there, Richard? All right, let's get those commandments there. Let's get those commandments there. What am I doing here, Richard? Yeah. We're going to get that there? Because we need this quiz this morning. Here we go. Number 1, I am the Lord your God. Thou shalt not have strange gods before me. That's correct. By the way, have you noticed? Not only do we and other Christians have a different form of the Our Father, but we also have the different numbering of the 10 commandments. Man, can't we agree on anything, What happened was our commandments was numbered by St. Augustine. He did it, and I think the Lutherans follow our numbering as well. If you ever notice other Christians, it's a little bit different because what they do, the first commandment, we sort of keep it as 1. They divide it into 2. The first commandment, they make that the first and second commandment. And so once you do that, then the whole numbering gets sort of messed up. And they sort of combine 9 and 10. We make that 2. You follow? We sort of make 9 and 10 2, facing to make that 1. You would think, guys, let's get together and agree on this. It'd be great, wouldn't it? Come on, something so basic. Oh, well. Anyway, that's the difference. If you notice, hey, wait a minute, that's not what we learned. Yeah, I know. Second commandment, then, you shall not take thy God in vain. On the road, you guys know your commandments? Okay, not too sure. It's early in the morning. I hope so. At St. Peter's, when you go to a grade school. Number 3. You know what number 3 is, Gunnar? All right, yeah. Anyway, remember to keep the Sabbath, the Lord's Day. Keep the Lord's Day holy. That's today, and that's why we're here, by the way. One of the reasons why we're here. Very good. So far, so good. Number 4. Honor your father and mother. Right? Good. You know your commandments. Number 5. You shall... No, we already had that one. Where were you? The Lord thy name. That's gone already, hon. We're done with that one. You shall not kill. Yeah, of course. It's early. You're still an hour back anyway. Number 6. Just mumble things, right? It is. Let me tell you this one. Let me tell you the example of this one, by the way. It was back in 1631. King Charles I. He asks Robert Barker, a printer, to print the Bible. And so he does. He makes 1,000 copies. Printing's relatively new back then. Still the kinks, there were some kinks, and things always didn't come out perfectly. And so nor did his printing of the Bible come out perfectly. It wasn't a big mistake. So he forgot one word. Big deal, right? One word. Out of all the words in the Bible, he's got one. And it's only 3 letters. N-O-T. So instead of his Bible said, you shall not commit adultery. His Bible said, you shall commit adultery. With that, he lost his job. Took away his printing license and fined him £300, which is like a lifetime savings. Well, by the way, 11 of the Bibles, they destroyed all the Bibles except 11. They're called the wicked Bibles. Anyway, so that's it, number 6. Let's go to number 7. Number 7. You shall what? I know that. All right, here we go. Good thing we go over this. You shall not steal. Thou shalt not steal. Life would be so much better if we follow that. Keep your doors on. You would have to lock your doors. You could trust people. Wouldn't it be great to live a life where you could trust people with your money, your stuff? I tell you, it makes sense. 8. You shall not bear witness against thy neighbor. Good, good. You got to know the commandments in order to keep the commandments. Number 9. You shall not covet. Is it goods or wife? I always get confused on this one. Wife or goods? Who says wife? Raise your hand. Psst, psst. My hand's raised. All right. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. And then finally, the last is, you shall not covet your neighbor's goods. As I said, Protestants or the other Christians combine that into one. We divide it. And anyway. That's the difference. You ever see that, okay? So there you are. And we need commandments, We need commandments. This California woman was facing 5 years in prison for forging drug prescriptions. And her day was at court. She came to court. She brought a medical note from a doctor asking her that she be excused from the trial to delay it. It was denied because the letter was forged as well. We need commandments. People don't fail obey, huh? That's right. Maybe just your luck. You have a heart attack and you think you're going to die. So therefore you confess to a murder that you committed 17 years ago, only to find out that you're not going to die, and now you spend the rest of your life in prison. That happened to James Robinson up in Nashville, Tennessee. How's this one? Talk about commandments. This trio of drug robbers broke into a home up in Silver Springs, Florida. And they thought they hit the jackpot. They found this jar filled with cocaine. So they took it home, they snorted the contents, only to find out that it wasn't cocaine. It was an urn filled with the remains of her husband and her deceased 2 dogs. Yes. That's why we need commandments. But actually, though, we don't like rules. We really don't like authority. Somehow we feel like it crips our style, deprives us of our freedom, deprives us of our joy and fun. And sometimes we look at the commandments the same way, that they're a hindrance, that they're a burden. But when the Israelites received them, it was a gift from God. It was seen as a gift. If you want to prosper, you want to live, follow the commandments and you will be blessed. There's a writer, Stanley Baldwin, who tells a story about when he was a child. It was during World War II. His family, his mom and dad and his sister, had a little vacation along the Pacific coast. And there they stayed at a motel there along the beach. And because it was during World War II, it has a light out rule there on the beach because of fear of being attacked by the Japanese. And so it was very, very dark. So anyway, they took a little walk at night along the beach, along the darkened beach. And the walking little Stan runs ahead of his mom and dad and his sister and begins climbing this little barricade, about a 4-foot barricade or so. And just about when he gets to the top and ready to go to the other side of the wall, his sister cries out, tells him, "Stanley, stop! Wait!" And so he hesitates, and all of a sudden, these soldiers come out, by the way, and they have their guns drawn, and they yell and chew them out. And so they go back home and, back to the motel and spend the night in the motel. Next morning they get up, sun's out, bright and early, clear day, and they go back to take another walk on the beach. And now Stan goes back to that same wall, and he climbs up, and he's about to go over to the other side until he looks down and notices it's not sand, it's a 40-foot drop on a rocky coast. You see, if he did go over, it would have been a disaster. And often we see the commandments that way as well. We think it's a barricade to our fun and freedom. But really what it is, it's protection that keeps us safe. What a great world would be if we can, live the commandments, keeping God's word. A lot of my time, I spend a lot of time with those who are dying through the hospital, homebound, or nursing homes. And I came to my own deduction. It's not a scientific proof, but, facing death is never easy. It could be a frightening experience. But I always found that if these two things are in place, people have a peaceful death. Again, this is just my thing, but I notice if these two things are in place, people have a peaceful death. One, if they are in good relationship to their loved ones, to their family. If they are connected to their loved ones and family, that gives them also a sense of accomplishment and peace. For I know it's not dependent upon the size of their house, the size of their bank account. If they are connected and feeling love to those who are special and important to them. And secondly, probably more importantly, their relationship to God. If they feel at peace, knowing that they weren't perfect, understanding that, but yet they're at peace with God, that I try to keep God's will, His word, there's a peace. And they, for the most part, have a peaceful death if they are connected to their family and loved ones and feel connected to God. Did I do my best to keep God's word? It was nice speaking at the 7:30 Mass. You know who Jack Benny and George Burns are. Yeah. If I do the 5:30 tonight, who's that with the kids? Who's that? But anyway, so with that, I'd like to share a little story about Jack Benny and George Burns. They were good friends way back, way in the early part of their career when they started out in vaudeville. They were close friends all the way up to, Jack Benny died first, but until his death, they were sort of close friends. Anyway, it was one day they were having lunch at a Hollywood restaurant, and they're sitting at a table, and George Burns noticed Jack Benny sort of perplexed, sort of staring at his bread. He said, well, what's the matter, Jack? He goes, well, I'm on a strict diet, and butter is forbidden. I can't have butter. And I really like butter, he said. I really like to have some butter on my bread. And he said, well, maybe I'll call my wife Mary and ask for her advice. And George Burns says, what? Don't be ridiculous. You don't have to ask your wife for advice. For God's sakes, you're a grown man. If you want to have butter, you have butter. You don't have to ask your wife's permission. Jack said, you're right. I don't have to ask my wife, and I don't have to. I can make my own decisions. So he decided to put butter on his bread, and butter boy did he put on it. Anyway, lunch went well, and the waiter brought over the bill, and George Burns points to Jack, saying he's paying. And Jack says, I'm paying? What do I got to pay for all of it? And Burns says, because if you don't, I'm going to tell Mary that you had butter on your bread. Yeah. And that's how it used to be with the commandments. We were taught as we taught the commandments, it was the fear of getting caught or being told on, if you break the commandments, you're going to be punished. If you don't, God's going to get you. And that's how somehow we sort of had this fear and trembling, to keep God's commandments. But hope we realize that it's not out of fear or punishment. Simply, this is how we live a blessed and prosperous life. Because when I follow His commandments, I have peace. I have peace within my heart, peace within my soul. And when I'm at peace, when I feel right relationship with God, I am more open to receive His blessing.